A routine hospital visit accidentally left her pregnant with a millionaire's baby. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. And now, let's return to our main character. Elena Moore believes nothing truly bad ever happens during a routine hospital visit. At 5:45 in the morning, the private wing of Crosswell Medical Center hums softly, monitors breathing in slow mechanical rhythm, fluorescent lights washing everything in pale white calm. Elena moves through the hallway with practiced precision, sneakers silent against polished floors, tablet held close to her chest like a shield. She is 26, a clinical lab technician trained to follow protocols exactly, because protocols keep people alive and mistakes destroy lives. Inside room 612, a man sits on the edge of the bed, sleeves rolled up, posture controlled but tired. His name on the chart reads Julian Cross, admitted for specialized hormone therapy, flagged with a quiet yellow marker that signals executive authorization. He looks ordinary at first glance, early 30s, dark hair, clean-shaven, eyes too alert for someone who claims he barely slept. Elena introduces herself, voice low, professional, explaining the procedure the same way she has hundreds of times. Julian listens closely, nodding once, then asks, almost casually, if she performs these injections every day. She answers yes, every day, and notices how his gaze lingers, not invasive, just curious, as if he is studying her steadiness. The injection itself is smooth, textbook perfect, the medication clear, the dosage confirmed, the barcode scanned and logged. Still, Elena hesitates for half a second, noticing a small note buried in the digital chart, protocol adjusted, authorized, and signed. Her stomach tightens, but the attending physician has already approved it, and questioning orders is not her place. Julian winces briefly, then relaxes, thanking her with a quiet sincerity that feels heavier than politeness. As she disposes of the syringe, the heart monitor resumes its steady cadence, the room returning to clinical normalcy. Elena documents the time, the dose, the response, sealing the moment inside the system forever. She does not know that this ordinary entry will become the most important record of her life. As she leaves the room, Julian watches her go, his expression unreadable, as if he senses something shifting beneath the surface of the calm. Elena steps back into the hallway, unaware that a single routine action, completed in under 60 seconds, has quietly crossed an invisible line that cannot be uncrossed. Outside the room, the day shift begins to stir, carts rolling, phones buzzing, coffee steaming in paper cups. Elena exhales, grounding herself in routine, reminding herself that patients come and go, charts close, and life moves forward. She does not see the camera in the corner blinking once, nor does she hear the muted discussion in the glass-walled office down the hall. Somewhere above her, financial floors and executive decisions intersect quietly with clinical care. Julian's file is already being copied, reviewed, and flagged for internal audit, though no one tells him yet. To Elena, he is just another name, another wristband, another carefully logged task before sunrise. She checks her watch, notes the time, and moves on to the next assignment, unaware that this morning will follow her into every tomorrow. In a hospital built on precision, the smallest deviation can echo for years, and this story, born in silence and fluorescent light, has only just begun. What she does not say is that she chose this career because mistakes are visible in medicine, measurable, accountable, unlike the chaos she grew up with. Years ago, a clerical error delayed her father's treatment by weeks, and by the time anyone admitted fault, it was too late. Since then, Elena has believed that precision is a form of love. The next morning, she returns to Crosswell Medical Center before sunrise, coffee cooling in her hand as she reviews the day's assignments. Her supervisor nods at her from across the station, already buried in charts. Elena likes being early because it gives her the illusion of control. In the break room, she overhears two nurses whispering about a donor meeting scheduled on the executive floor, Men in tailored suits who fund wings and research and rarely see the patients whose lives they influence. Elena keeps her head down, focusing on the small victories, a stable lab result, a clean sample, a procedure completed without incident. Around mid-morning, Dr. Nathan Hale steps into her workspace, his presence changing the air instantly. He is the head of the department, respected, untouchable, and known for protecting his staff as long as they do not ask questions. He glances at Elena's screen, then at her face, and says softly that certain patients require flexibility, that medicine is not always as rigid as textbooks pretend. He smiles when he says it, as if offering reassurance. Elena nods, though something about the conversation leaves her uneasy. Flexibility has never been part of her vocabulary. Later, she checks Julian Cross's chart out of habit. It has been locked, restricted access, a digital door closing where curiosity once lived. His room is empty now, bed stripped, equipment reset, as if he had never been there. Elena tells herself this is normal. Patients are discharged, transferred, forgotten. Yet she remembers the unsigned note, the adjusted protocol, and the way Julian watched her leave, as if memorizing the moment. Over the following days, Elena's routine holds, but her body does not. She feels exhausted in a way sleep does not fix, dizzy during long rounds, sensitive to the antiseptic smells she once ignored. She blames stress, extra shifts, the quiet pressure of bills stacking neatly on her kitchen table. One afternoon, as she prepares a sample, her hands tremble just enough for a coworker to notice. Elena laughs it off, but inside, a familiar fear surfaces, the fear of being careless, of becoming the very thing she despises. That night, she wakes before dawn with nausea curling in her stomach, the city note quiet outside her window. She sits on the edge of the bed, grounding herself, counting breaths, reminding herself that fear is not fact. Still, she schedules an appointment at a walk-in clinic under a false sense of irony, a medical professional seeking reassurance from a system she trusts more than instinct. As she waits, staring at outdated magazines and listening to the hum of fluorescent lights, Elena thinks about how a single line in a chart can redirect a life. She does not know yet what the test will say, only that something within her feels irrevocably shifted. Somewhere across the city, Julian Cross has already begun asking questions of his own, pulling threads that lead back to one quiet technician who followed the rules and may now pay the price. When Elena's name is finally called, she stands, unaware that certainty is about to vanish, and that this story is tightening its grip, drawing both of them toward a truth neither planned to face. Elena sits in the small examination room of the walk-in clinic, paper crinkling beneath her as she waits, staring at a poster that explains early symptoms of stress and dehydration, almost laughing at how easily science can minimize fear. The nurse draws blood, asks routine questions, and leaves without ceremony, and Elena walks back into the city convinced that whatever is wrong will have a simple explanation. 2 days later, she is back at Crosswell, standing at her station when an automated alert flashes briefly across her screen before disappearing, a system glitch she would normally ignore. This time, she does not. During her lunch break, she logs into a restricted training terminal and traces the alert to an internal audit flagged under Julian Cross's admission number. The report is incomplete, half-sealed, but one line stands out: medication variance detected, review pending. Elena's heart slows, then pounds harder, because she remembers the hesitation, the unsigned authorization, the way Dr. Hale spoke about flexibility. She tells herself not to speculate, yet her mind replays the injection step by step, the label, the barcode, the milliliters measured with steady hands. Nothing was wrong, and yet the system says otherwise. That afternoon, Dr. Hale calls her into his office. He closes the door gently and gestures for her to sit, his tone calm, almost paternal. He explains that the hospital occasionally participates in advanced therapeutic protocols for high-value patients, that certain adjustments are made under executive consent, and that documentation sometimes lags behind practice, with instructions to rest and avoid stress, advice that feels almost cruel in its simplicity. As days pass, her symptoms intensify, and so does the sense that a line was crossed without her knowledge or consent. She begins documenting everything privately: dates, times, conversations, fragments of memory, creating note after note that she keeps hidden at home. Elena does not yet know what the truth is, only that it is moving toward her with quiet inevitability. Above her, Julian Cross prepares to return to the hospital he owns, not as a patient, but as an authority, unaware that the answers he seeks will collide directly with a woman whose life was altered by a moment both of them believed was routine, and that the next discovery will make silence impossible. Days pass, and what unsettles Elena most is not what happens, but what does not. Julian Cross does not return. His name disappears from internal boards, his chart remains locked, and no follow-up notes appear in the system. At Crosswell, absence is usually explained by transfers or recoveries, but this absence feels deliberate, as if someone has carefully erased the footprint of a man who should still be echoing through the building. Elena continues working, moving from lab to lab, procedure to procedure, yet her attention fractures in small ways she cannot fully control. She double-checks labels she never used to doubt, rereads orders already confirmed, and flinches slightly whenever Dr. Hale's voice carries across the department. He behaves as though nothing unusual occurred, greeting staff with his steady confidence, reminding everyone that the hospital is undergoing internal optimization and that discretion is essential. Elena nods when required, but her private notes grow thicker, pages filled with times, phrases, and sensations she cannot categorize as evidence yet refuses to forget. At home, her symptoms intensify. Food tastes wrong, sleep comes in shallow waves, and mornings bring a heaviness that feels older than fatigue. She tells herself she is imagining patterns, that stress can create illusions as convincing as truth, but her body does not listen. One evening, she stands in the shower, water tracing familiar lines down her arms, and realizes she has begun counting days without intending to. That frightens her more than anything else. At work, a subtle shift spreads through the staff. Meetings are rescheduled without explanation, certain research folders are removed from shared drives, and security badges are reissued with updated access levels. Elena overhears fragments of conversation about compliance reviews and donor expectations, words that float past without context but leave unease behind. She considers asking questions, then remembers her father's delayed care, the polite assurances that everything was under control, and stays silent. Silence has always seemed safer than confrontation. One afternoon, she is called to assist with a routine intake, and as she prepares the room, she catches her reflection in the stainless steel cabinet. She looks paler, thinner, as if the hospital has begun to consume her rather than employ her. In that moment, she understands that waiting will not protect her, but acting might cost her everything. She schedules another appointment, this time requesting definitive confirmation, no more preliminary language. While Elena waits for answers, Julian Cross operates in a parallel silence. From his office overlooking the city, he authorizes a discreet internal review, one that bypasses department heads and reports directly to him. He reviews surveillance timestamps, medication logs, and approval chains, noticing how responsibility funnels upward and then vanishes into executive language designed to shield decision-makers. Julian has spent his career dismantling inefficiencies, but this is different. This is not about profit or innovation. This is about consent, about a system that assumed compliance where transparency should have existed. He orders his team to pause all related protocols and prepares to appear at Crosswell unannounced, aware that sudden presence can reveal what scheduled visits never do. Elena receives the clinic's call the same day. The nurse asks her to come in immediately, voice carefully neutral. Elena drives through traffic that seems louder than usual, every honk and siren pressing against her nerves. In the examination room, the doctor confirms what Elena already suspects, words falling into place with clinical precision. The test is positive. There is no ambiguity left. Elena feels the room tilt slightly, her mind splitting between disbelief and a sharp, grounded clarity. She asks practical questions, timelines, options, procedures, because that is how she copes with shock. When she leaves, the city looks unchanged, people crossing streets, buying coffee, living inside assumptions she no longer shares. Back at Crosswell, she finishes her shift in silence, passing room 612 once more, now freshly cleaned, as if trying to erase memory itself. She understands now that Julian's disappearance was not an ending but a warning that forces larger than her routine have already moved. Elena goes home knowing that the truth is no longer something she can carry alone, and somewhere above her, Julian Cross steps into an elevator bound for the hospital floor where everything began, setting in motion a collision neither of them can avoid, and that the next meeting will make pretending impossible. Elena does not cry when she gets home, which surprises her more than the diagnosis itself. She sets her bag down, turns on the kitchen light, and sits at the small table where unpaid bills are stacked neatly beside a bowl of fruit she no longer wants to look at. The confirmation echoes in her mind. Positive, definitive, no ambiguity left, and yet the apartment feels unchanged, as if reality has chosen to move forward without her permission. She places one hand on her abdomen, not searching for feeling but acknowledging fact, because denial has never helped anyone survive. That night, she opens her notebook and adds a single line at the top of a new page, date and time, confirmed pregnancy, estimated timeline aligns with hospital incident. Writing it makes her breathing steadier. Precision is how she stays upright. Over the next few days, Elena becomes acutely aware of how much of her life depends on invisibility. She wears looser scrubs, times her breaks to avoid questions, and memorizes the pattern of nausea so she can predict it before it overwhelms her. At work, she watches Dr. Hale more closely than ever, noticing how he deflects inquiries with polished language and how quickly others accept his authority. She wonders if he knows already, if the system has flagged her condition the same way it flags anomalies in data. The thought makes her pulse quicken. Elena considers reporting the incident formally, then imagines the investigation spiraling outward, her name becoming a liability rather than a person. She has seen what happens to employees who disrupt powerful narratives. They are thanked for their service and quietly removed. Meanwhile, Julian Cross arrives at Crosswell without announcement. He walks through the lobby like any executive visitor, tailored suit, controlled expression, eyes absorbing details most people overlook. He notices the tension beneath routine efficiency, the way staff straighten too quickly when they see him, the way conversations stop mid-sentence. In the executive conference room, he listens as department heads present filtered summaries, none of which fully address the discrepancies he has identified. Julian asks precise questions, each one narrowing the gap between explanation and truth. When he mentions medication variants, Dr. Hale responds smoothly, citing experimental allowances and donor consent, framing the issue as resolved. Julian does not argue. He thanks them and adjourns the meeting, his silence more unsettling than confrontation. Later, he requests access to raw data and personnel logs, bypassing department leadership entirely. Elena is unaware of Julian's presence until she sees his name appear briefly on an internal message board, announcing a system-wide compliance review effective immediately. Her stomach tightens. She understands enough about institutional behavior to know that reviews rarely exist without cause. That afternoon, she nearly collides with a man turning a corner near the elevators. She steps back instinctively, apologizing, then freezes when she looks up. It is Julian. He recognizes her instantly, though his expression does not change. For a moment, neither speaks. The hallway hums with distant machinery, a neutral backdrop to a moment heavy with implication. Julian inclines his head politely and continues on, leaving Elena standing still, heart racing, thoughts colliding. He did not say her name, but she is certain he knows it. The encounter confirms what Elena has feared since the diagnosis, that her life and his are no longer moving on separate tracks. That evening, Elena attends her follow-up appointment alone. The doctor discusses options, timelines, resources, emphasizing choice and autonomy, words Elena clings to like anchors. She asks questions about confidentiality, about workplace disclosure, about legal protections. Each answer helps, but none erase the reality that the pregnancy exists within a system that has already failed her once. On the way home, she stops by a small park and sits on a bench, letting the early evening settle around her. She considers what responsibility means now, not just to herself, but to a future she did not plan. Above her, in a building of glass and steel, Julian Cross reviews Elena Moore's personnel file in full for the first time. He does not yet know about the pregnancy, but he senses the weight of an unseen consequence tied to a decision he did not fully consent to either. As night falls, both of them sit with the knowledge that something irreversible has begun, that truth is pressing closer, and that the next conversation will. Forced choices neither can postpone any longer, drawing them toward a confrontation that will change everything. Elena is called to the administrative floor 3 days later, the request arriving through an internal message marked mandatory, sender concealed behind a generic executive header. She reads it twice, feeling the familiar tightening in her chest that comes when authority speaks without explanation. The elevator ride feels longer than usual, rising past floors she rarely visits. The doors opening onto a corridor lined with glass offices and muted art meant to signal power without warmth. A receptionist gestures her toward a conference room at the end of the hall, and Elena walks in with her shoulders squared, reminding herself that she has done nothing wrong. Julian Cross stands by the window, city spread beneath him like a map of consequences. He turns when he hears her enter, and for the first time, he does not look like a patient. The tailored suit, the calm command of the space, the way others wait outside instead of inside, all of it makes the truth unmistakable. Julian introduces himself formally, not as a man she treated, but as the founder and principal owner of Crosswell Health. The words land with quiet force, rearranging Elena's understanding of every interaction they have shared. He invites her to sit, and she does, hands folded tightly in her lap, mind racing through policies and protections she memorized but never expected to use. Julian explains that he is conducting an internal review into irregularities connected to his treatment, that her name surfaced as a key point of contact, not because of wrongdoing, but because of consistency. He tells her he remembers her hesitation, the precision of her work, the way she followed protocol even when the system itself appeared compromised. Elena listens, heart pounding, unsure whether this is reassurance or indictment. She answers his questions carefully, recounting events exactly as they occurred, describing the unsigned authorization, Dr. Hale's language about flexibility, the absence of full documentation. Julian listens without interruption, eyes steady, absorbing details that confirm what he has already suspected. He tells her plainly that he did not consent to experimental deviation beyond approved parameters, that something was altered without transparent authorization, and that he intends to uncover who benefited from that alteration. Elena feels a surge of conflicting emotions, vindication intertwined with fear, because truth does not always protect those who speak it. Julian assures her that retaliation will not be tolerated, that her position is secure, that he values integrity over convenience. His tone is measured, but the implication is clear. He is not asking. He is correcting a system that failed both of them. As the meeting concludes, Julian pauses, studying Elena with an intensity that feels personal rather than professional. He tells her that consequences are rarely isolated, that decisions made in sterile rooms can echo far beyond their walls. Elena nods, understanding that he is speaking from experience, though she does not yet know how closely his words align with her own reality. When she leaves the conference room, she passes Dr. Hale in the corridor. He offers her a polite smile that does not reach his eyes, and for the first time, Elena does not lower her gaze. Back at her workstation, whispers ripple quietly through the department. Everyone knows something is happening, though no one knows exactly what. That evening, Elena returns home feeling exposed, as if the careful invisibility she cultivated has been stripped away. She sits at her kitchen table, hand resting protectively against her abdomen, considering what to disclose and when. The knowledge that Julian Cross now occupies a central place in her life, not as an abstract authority, but as a man whose decisions intersect directly with her body, feels overwhelming. Meanwhile, Julian remains in his office long after the building empties, reviewing timelines and access logs, thinking not only about policy failures, but about Elena's composure, her restraint, the quiet strength that suggests she carries burdens he has not yet named. He does not know about the pregnancy, but he senses that the story between them is incomplete, that something unspoken is shaping her careful distance. As night settles over the city, both of them understand that their paths have converged irrevocably, that power and vulnerability are no longer abstract concepts, and that the next truth revealed will force a reckoning neither position nor preparation can soften, pulling them toward a confrontation that will redefine responsibility, consent, and the meaning of staying. The confrontation comes sooner than Elena expects, not in a courtroom or a formal hearing, but in a quiet office late in the afternoon when the hospital seems to hold its breath. Julian asks her to return to the administrative floor, this time without intermediaries or concealed headers. When she arrives, the atmosphere is different, less procedural, more human. Julian does not stand by the window. He sits at the conference table, jacket removed, sleeves rolled back, the posture of a man prepared to listen rather than command. He begins by explaining that the internal review has uncovered a pattern, approvals routed through Dr. Hale that exceeded donor consent and bypassed standard oversight, all justified under language that sounded ethical while erasing transparency. Julian admits that his trust in the system he built allowed those shortcuts to exist. Elena listens, jaw tight, because accountability spoken aloud does not undo what has already happened. She takes a breath and tells him the truth she has been carrying alone. She tells him about the clinic visit, the confirmation, the timeline that aligns perfectly with the day of his treatment. She says the word pregnant once, quietly, and then lets the silence expand. Julian does not interrupt. He does not reach for his phone or ask clarifying questions. He sits very still, as if absorbing a physical blow. When he finally speaks, his voice is steady but altered, stripped of distance. He says he did not know, that he would never have consented to anything that risked another person without explicit understanding, that the idea of her bearing the consequence of a decision filtered through power makes him angry in a way he rarely allows himself to feel. Elena hears the sincerity, but sincerity does not erase violation. She tells him that intention is irrelevant to outcome, that her body now carries evidence of a system that treated consent as negotiable. Her words are careful, controlled, yet every sentence lands with force. Julian accepts this without defense. He tells her that whatever she chooses, he will support, legally, financially, and publicly if necessary, but that he will not assume a role she does not invite. Elena asks him what support means when power is uneven, when his presence alone can shape narratives that bury hers. Julian answers no with promises, but with structure. He outlines safeguards he has already enacted, independent counsel for her, full transparency reports, suspension of all related protocols, and an external investigation that does not answer to him. He offers distance if she wants it, presence if she needs it, and silence if that is the safest option. Elena studies him, recognizing that he is doing something rare, relinquishing control rather than exerting it. Still, she is not ready to trust. She tells him she needs time, that the pregnancy is not a bargaining chip, that her choice will be made without pressure or expectation. Julian nods, accepting boundaries without protest. He says one thing before she leaves, not an apology designed to soothe, but a statement of responsibility. He says he will dismantle whatever allowed this to happen, even if it costs him reputation and allies, because leadership without accountability is a lie. Elena leaves the office feeling exposed yet strangely steadier, as if naming the truth has anchored her. In the days that follow, the hospital shifts again. Dr. Hale is placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Departments are audited openly. Whispers turn into conversations. On screens, not as a culprit, but as a witness to a system that used her precision to legitimize its shortcuts. When she is called to speak, she does not embellish. She describes the morning of the injection, the unsigned authorization, the reassurances that discouraged questions, the absence of transparency that followed. She states the outcome plainly, confirmed pregnancy, aligned timeline, no prior consent. The room is silent, not shocked, but focused, as if a truth long suspected has finally been given shape. Dr. Hale's counsel argues intent, innovation, donor expectations, but intent collapses under documentation, and innovation offers no shield against consent. By the end of the day, findings are clear. Dr. Hale is terminated for cause, referred for professional review, and Crosswell is ordered to implement structural reforms overseen externally for 5 years. The ruling emphasizes patient autonomy, staff protection, and accountability that does not stop at hierarchy. Julian Cross issues a public statement the same evening, accepting responsibility for systemic failures, announcing a restitution fund for affected patients, and inviting oversight rather than resisting it. He does not name Elena, honoring her privacy, but the implications are unmistakable. In the weeks that follow, Elena experiences a quiet shift. The hospital feels different, less performative, more careful. New protocols appear with clear language and signed consent at every step. Staff speak openly, questions encouraged rather than deflected. Elena returns to work part-time after medical leave, supported without spectacle, allowed to choose distance or engagement on her terms. She attends prenatal appointments, learning to listen to her body without fear, to rest without guilt. Julian remains present but restrained, communicating through counsel when necessary, checking in through brief messages that ask only how she is, never what she plans. One afternoon, he requests a meeting in a public place, a small cafe near the park Elena frequents, emphasizing that she can decline. She agrees, choosing neutrality over avoidance. They sit across from each other, sunlight cutting gentle angles across the table. Julian speaks first, acknowledging that justice addresses structure but not experience, that repair is not a single act but a series of choices made consistently. He reiterates that he will support whatever she decides, that his role is not to claim but to care responsibly. Elena tells him she feels safer now, not because harm was undone, but because it was named and addressed. She says healing, for her, looks like stability, boundaries, and time. Julian listens, nodding, accepting limits without negotiation. As weeks turn into months, their interactions remain measured, respectful, quietly human. Elena notices small changes in herself, less vigilance, more curiosity, moments of unexpected warmth when she thinks of the future rather than bracing against it. Julian channels his focus into reform, expanding the oversight program across all facilities, funding independent ethics training, and stepping back from daily operations to allow scrutiny to breathe. He does not perform redemption. He practices it. On a cool evening, Elena stands in the park watching leaves fall, hand resting over the steady curve of her abdomen, feeling movement that anchors her in the present. She considers how healing does not erase what happened, but transforms how it lives within her. Across the city, Julian reviews a final compliance report, satisfied not with closure, but with continuity. Neither of them knows what their relationship will become, only that trust, once fractured, is rebuilt through action, not assumption. As winter approaches, their paths continue to intersect carefully, intentionally, leaving space for choice, and the story settles into a quieter tension, one that promises not an ending, but the possibility of something honest taking shape. The winter morning Elena goes into labor is quiet, the city softened by fresh snow that turns familiar streets into something almost gentle. She arrives at the hospital not as an employee, but as a patient, escorted through the same doors she once walked with routine confidence. This time, she feels something different, not fear, but resolve. The staff treats her with careful respect, aware of history without being defined by it. Hours pass measured in breaths and steady encouragement, and when her child is finally placed in her arms, the weight is grounding in a way nothing else has ever been. Elena does not cry then either. She smiles, a small, private smile that belongs only to her and the life she chose to protect. Julian arrives later, not summoned, not announced, but allowed. He stands just inside the room, hands clasped, waiting for permission that matters. Elena looks up, studies his face, and nods once. He steps closer, eyes soft, awe and responsibility settling together as he looks at the child. He does not reach out immediately. When he finally does, it is careful, almost reverent, as if he understands that presence itself is a promise. In the weeks that follow, life finds a new rhythm. Elena takes extended leave, supported without pressure, her choices respected at every turn. Julian remains involved, attending appointments when invited, contributing quietly, never assuming entitlement to moments he has not earned. The media moves on, scandals replaced by new headlines, but the reforms remain, visible in every consent form and oversight report. Crosswell becomes a case study in accountability, cited not for innovation alone, but for correction. Elena adjusts to motherhood with the same precision she once applied to lab work, learning patience where control once ruled. She accepts help from friends, from her mother whose health stabilizes enough to offer gentle support, and from Julian, who shows up consistently, not grandly. Months later, on a spring afternoon, they meet again at the park, the same bench where Elena once sat in uncertainty. The child sleeps peacefully in a stroller between them. Julian speaks about the future openly for the first time, not in plans, but in questions. He asks what Elena wants, what kind of life feels safe, what role he can play without overshadowing her autonomy. Elena answers honestly. She tells him she does not believe in accidents anymore, only in outcomes shaped by choices. She says trust grows when power steps back and listens. Julian smiles, understanding that this is not a rejection, but an invitation to continue earning a place rather than claiming it. The unexpected twist comes not in romance, but in alignment. Elena decides to stay at Crosswell, not out of loyalty, but purpose. She accepts a new role on an independent ethics board, shaping policy from lived experience. Julian supports the decision without influence, proud of distance maintained. Their relationship remains undefined by labels, strengthened instead by shared responsibility and mutual respect. The story does not end with a wedding or a declaration, but with something quieter and perhaps rarer, a partnership built on consent renewed daily. As the sun dips lower, Elena lifts her child from the stroller and places them gently in Julian's arms. She watches him adjust instinctively, protective without possession, present without control. She says softly that this was not an accident anymore. Julian nods, understanding that love, like leadership, is proven through action, not status. And that is the lesson this story leaves behind. That kindness without accountability is fragile, that power without humility harms. And that true healing begins when people choose responsibility over convenience. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect on the small choices that shape bigger outcomes in your own life. And if you believe stories like this matter, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need a reminder that integrity and compassion still change everything.